is the 9th of August 2023. That essentially means it's 1 year down the line since you thronged to polling stations last year to elect the Kenya Kwanza government into office. Exactly. A time like this, we're out in the polling stations looking at how the polls were shaping up. Majority of you by now had already cast their votes, awaiting the IEBC then to start the counting process and announce the overall winner in all those positions that you went out to vote for. It's exactly 1 year. That means that we have to look back and see exactly what the government has been for that 1 year. Now, this is exactly what has happened since then in terms of how this government has taken shape. Number one, the elections were contested by the opposition, that is the azimio side. The courts made themselves clear that indeed all the evidence that was delivered by the azimio side was what they essentially called hot air. After that, the azimio coalition said they were not satisfied with the decision for the courts, and now we started then going back to mass demonstrations in the streets. A year down the line, a day like this, very, it was a symbolic indeed, because the inaugural talks for the government and the opposition side kick off today at the Bomas of Kenya. So not essentially an accident, if you would say so. It is just by design, if you may, because Kenyans are now waiting to see exactly what comes out of those talks, which are essentially going to form the way the country moves forward. Now, key things that this government has done since they came into power. Number one, there has been a talk of pushing for what is like a monolithic kind of party, where the opposition essentially has no say in what happens in the government. Number two, talks of inheriting a battered economy, where the president and the vice president going in to say that they walked into office with nothing, absolutely a debt-ridden economy that they are trying to fix now. Just the other day, the president also did say that indeed now we have fixed the economy, that we've turned things around. We're not going to ride on a debt to fund the economy. Also, the pledge for affordable fertilizer seems like it has been met, with farmers now buying fertilizer at 2,500 shillings. And what we've witnessed throughout is the street protest, just like I said. And then now, the biggest notable change or push in this government is again the radical proposals in the education sector, which we'll be talking about this morning as we look back to the 1 year that has been since we went out to vote. My name is Simba Kiage. This is the Morning Drift, but most certainly you are watching Lookuptv from whatever it is that you're watching us this morning across the country. I take this opportunity to thank you very much for choosing to begin your day with us over Jump Park Station all the way up to 10 a.m. this morning. Oof, quite a long time, isn't it? But we're here to do that. Good morning. Once we come back, I'll be taking you straight to your dailies this morning, where we can get to take a look at what it is that you're waking up to. Let's wake up this morning then to the standards. This is what they're saying. On August 9th, 2022, Kenyans trooped to polling stations and made their intent known. The battle was between hustlers and the elites and the bottom-up economic model, where subsidies will only be awarded to production. A year later, we begin to look at the promises made versus the reality on the ground. A particular story has been covered on pages 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the Standard this morning. And by the way, that is going to be the back end of our conversation this morning on what this government has done a year later. We'll be looking at those promises and then putting them to test this morning on the sidelines of that. Now, other than that, there's the story about journalists now count day Nairobi skies what darkened. That's the particular story as being covered on pages 6 and 7. That is the memory of the terror attacks in Nairobi. If you do remember, that's why we even have a memorial park in the country. On page 2, the cabinet shifts plan on sugar companies. That is a particular story that's been covered on pages 2. And Man City is still the team to beat as EPL kicks off. By the way, the first match is this Friday. Man City are the ones who are going to open the season. Yeah, all right. That's exactly what has been covered on the Standard. Let's move on to the Daily Nation. The Daily Nation is talking about how juniors bagged 600,000 shillings each per month in allowances. Some 21 employees of the Department of Public Works each pocketed 617,285 shillings monthly, or 20,294 shillings daily, assuming they worked for 365 days, to collectively draw 155.5 million annually in travel parks. The amount is nearly 20% of the entire department's wage bill. Oof. Right, 7.4 million was the amount that was backed in shillings each employee annually. Oof. All right. It's a good story. Read it on page 7. On page 8, you're going to read about how the judge who blocked RUTO's taxes twice has now officially been moved to Malindi. All right? If Fande then rings a bell, then you will see exactly where this story makes sense. Part of those judges that have been moved is also Justice Majanja. Again, you're going to read that story on page 8. On the back page, there's a story about how Cabinet now abandons plan to sell 6 state sugar millers. Read that particular story on the back page. On pages 10, civil servants are supposed to lose allowances. Now salaries, body scraps retreat, sitting and tax force payments, as well as reviews local travel rates for public officers. And there's a particular story that has been covered on page 6 on the fury over Kome's protest death claims. Now police boss, that is Japheth Kome, claims bodies paraded in morgues were not victims of police killings, but opposition leader's term is allegation outrageous and insensitive to grieving families. That particular story has been covered on page 6. Now the bigger story here is back to Bomas, where it began. Now today, representatives of the President Ruto and opposition leader Raila Amolo Odinga converge for talks to end a lingering post-election crisis, a venue where a year ago the warring factions scuffled prior to the declaration of poll results following a tight presidential contest. Now the dispute has persisted since a year down the line. That particular story covered on pages 5. Now you don't know exactly what it is that you're waking up to this morning. For now, let's take a tiny breather. Once we come back, I'll be taking you straight to the newsroom. Welcome back. A police constable in Nakuru has been arrested after he allegedly shot dead his colleague on a Tuesday morning. According to Police Commander Samuel Andanyi, the incident happened at the Rift Valley Regional Canine Unit headquarters in Nakuru Valley Regional East. Investigations have been launched into the matter as a motive is yet to be established.
A police commander has been disarmed and held at Nakuru police station after he allegedly shot his colleague dead. Nakuru Police Commander Samuel Ndanyi confirmed the incident, saying that the police constable shot Sergeant Christopher Kimeli under unclear circumstances, as other officers speculate that the two officers may have had personal differences they were unaware of.
This morning at around 5, it was reported by one of our officers who had had a gunshot that one sergeant by the name Kimeli had been shot by one of his colleagues, a police constable by the name Konga. The cause of shooting is not yet known. We are yet to find out what actually transpired that led the constable Konga to shoot his supervisor. Jackson Konga, the other one is Christopher Kimeli, the deceased, the sergeant. Yeah. Konga was on duty. Konga was on duty. Kimeli was also on duty, but he had actually signed off. He was heading to somewhere to pick his child from a certain school. So he actually had just signed off duty. He was the duty officer of that particular formation, K9 formation.
The county police boss said that the suspect was immediately disarmed and taken to custody at Central Police Station.
Yeah, we are yet to find out. Actually, we can't speculate for as at now his character, whether he was drunk or not. But what I can confirm is we disarmed him and he's already under custody here in Nakuru Police Station. Yeah, but we don't have much. Actually, the investigation are underway, so we don't want to speculate that maybe he was drunk, he was this. No, we don't want to speculate that.
The incident comes at a time when there have been rising concerns over the mental wellness of police officers. Mevin Getembe, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
Right, moving on. The National Assembly has adopted a report by the Special Funds Accounts Committee following a report by the Auditor General on the misappropriation of funds in state corporations. Now, the lawmakers have now proposed, so let's take that again now, the lawmakers have now proposed the implementation of strict measures within the corporations so as to ensure efficiency and curb corruption. Stanley Lugaria with more.
Members were required. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast. Good afternoon.
Who and to the public officers and officers who have sought refuge in public coffers after National Assembly on Tuesday adopted the report on the Special Funds Account Committee following consideration of a report of the Auditor General on the financial statements for the state corporations tabled in the House on 15th June 2023.
Committee observed cases where land held by various institutions were not secured and titled accordingly.
One of the things we've seen is the serious mismanagement of our post-secondary institutions.
For any CEO who has been given mandate to run an organization to say he does not know or understand accounting procedures, that we will not take from any CEO in this country. So
the lawmakers says now officers will be required to prioritize projects so as to avoid misappropriation of the funds, faulting the stalled government projects that have lasted for over 35 years.
A classic case in this example, Honorable Speaker, is the NEC, the new Mutiani House, which has taken 37 years. Another example is Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, Honorable Speaker, where it has taken over 27 years and the building has not been completed.
MPs are now calling on the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, to move with speed and ensure all public agencies comply with the equity and inclusivity clause as per the Constitution.
The committee recommends that all public agencies must comply with the constitutional provision on equity and inclusiveness buttressed by the National Cohesion and Integration Act, number 12 of 2008.
The lawmakers have further recommended that all public officers reflect the face of Kenya during the hiring process so as to avoid the tribalism and nepotism menace that has rocked the agencies.
Honorable Speaker, you would find an agency, a university, which has 99% of its employees coming from one ethnic community.
The committee has called on the government to review the tertiary education tuition fee and all matters of COSEP's placement, claiming that there is a public outcry from parents to lower the fees so as to achieve affordable education for all Kenyan children and is now waiting on the Auditor General's report on the investigation into the funds allocated to all private agencies across the country for the financial year 2018 to 2021. The committee wants the tertiary education institutions to utilize the internal personnel from within the schools rather than opting for outsourced consultancies, which has proven a thorn in flesh for sustenance.
Expensive consultancies. You know, some of the universities that we have personnel who actually can provide consultancy at a reasonable fee. They are professors, they are engineers, they are doctors. They are people who have knowledge within a university. But the vice chancellor or the CEO of that will go out there and look for his friends and procure a consultancy at a very exorbitant cost just because they want to corrupt the system.
Stanley Lugaria, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
Two members of County Assembly of Nyamira have been transferred from Naivasha Level 4 Hospital to Aga Khan Hospital, Nairobi for special treatment following a tragic accident on Monday along by Mayo Narok Road that left Nyamira County Assembly Majority Leader Elijah Osiemo dead. Oshina Mungasa with the details.
Nyamira County is in mourning after 3 MCAs were involved in a tragic accident at Kedong Farm in Nakuru, leading to the death of Majority Leader of Nyamira County Assembly, Elijah Osiemo. The 2 other MCAs, Duke Masila and Priscilla Nyatich, have been transferred from Naivasha Hospital Level 5 to Aga Khan Hospital in Nairobi for special treatment.
Leo tumepata habari ya kuhuzunisha kwamba waheshimiwa wangu watatu walihusika katika ajali ya barabara ambao walikuwa on duty kuelekea Nairobi. Na kwa bahati mbaya tukampoteza kiranja mkuu wa wengi ambaye ni Majority Leader, Honorable Elijah Osiemo.
According to Masila, who is the Deputy Majority Leader, they were headed to Nairobi for business activities when the accident occurred a few kilometers from Mahimai town.
Na tulikuwa na wenzangu, driver wa Mheshimiwa Priscilla mwenyewe na Mheshimiwa Osiemo, my leader of majority, whom I deputize. I'm the deputy leader majority. We were headed to Nairobi for a meeting. Bad luck on the way. Tukapatana na pikipiki yenye ilikuwa imebeba makaa. Driver alipojaribu kuikwepa kidogo, nao pia yule mjamaa akashtuka tena naye pia karudi kwa barabara.
The Director of Commerce in the county, Bernard Maina, has stated that the accident is a huge blow to the county and the family of the deceased Osiemo.
It's a very sad evening, just like what my colleagues have said. We've lost a young, brilliant, honorable member of the County Assembly of Nyamira and the Majority Leader. It's indeed very sad to the county government of Nyamira and to the people of Nyamira as a whole. We want to wish the family of the late honorable member for Nyamira, honorable county assembly member of Nyamira, honorable Elijah. We want to wish them comfort, especially this difficult moment.
Naivasha Chief Police Benjamin Moen has confirmed the incident, saying that the body of the deceased was taken to Maimai's morgue. Nushin Mungasia, Lookuptv.
President William Ruto has put on notice all cartels in the milk sector, insisting that his administration will do whatever it takes to ensure milk farmers benefit from their farming. Speaking in Nyeri County during the commissioning of the KICC modernization program, Ruto assured milk farmers of the importation of milk coolers to aid milk storage and prevent losses.
On his 4th day in his Mount Kenya tour, Tuesday morning, and President William Ruto made his way to Kiganjo in Nyeri County. His main agenda being the commissioning of the modernization of KCC, with the plight of farmers top of his agenda.
We will increase our own capacity. Katika hii modernization program yetu, tunataka kuongeza capacity ya KCC from 380,000 liters to 800,000 liters.
Speaking after inspecting the facility, President William Ruto reiterated his commitment to ensure milk farmers benefit from the modernization of the facility noting that an improvement in the facilities will help improve production and the prices of milk in the country.
Tunazidi na kutafuta mbinu na namna ya kuhakikisha kwamba we do more processing of our milk, do less sale of raw milk, because by doing more processing, we add more value. We have a plan on how we are going to move our milk production from 5.2 billion liters to 10 billion liters. And we are going to implement that plan together with the farmers.
In a bid to further improve and shift to large-scale production of milk, the head of state hinted at plans to procure more milk coolers from Poland.
Wakulima wengi wanahangaika na maziwa barabarani kwa sababu ile process ya kufikisha maziwa mahali ambapo inaweza kuanza kushughulikiwa na mambo ya processing. Tumeweka mpango ya milk coolers 650 ambazo tutazileta tuzisambaze katika kila mpango. Nia yetu ni at least tufikishe kila ward milk cooler.
With the milk farmers decrying large bulks of powdered milk in the country, President RUTO and his deputy cautioned cartels importing powdered milk while calling on the dairy board to prioritize the plight of farmers.
Tukiwa tunatafuta soko ya kitaifa na tunatafuta soko ya kimataifa, pia tutahakikisha ya kwamba watu ambao wanatafuta kutengeneza pesa ya haraka kwenda kutuletea sijui powder milk kutoka sijui nchi gani, alafu wanaingiza ukora huko ndani, wanalete hapa, tunaenda hasara, wanakuja wanacompete na maziwa ya wakulima wetu. Hiyo mlango tutafunga. Kazi ya dairy board ni kuchunga haki ya mkulima, sio kuchunga haki ya processors. That is not their business. Their business is to make sure that our farmers are not undermined. Our local production is not undermined. Hiyo poda tunaona inatolewa kwa nchi zingine kupitia milango na madirisha ya nyuma. Hiyo madirisha yote ifungwe na hiyo milango yote ifungwe, ndio wakulima hawa wapate nafuu, tuweze kuendelea.
Ian Keitani, Lookuptv.
Now, in a continued feud between the Inspector General of Police, Japhet Koome, and Azimio leader Raila Amolo Odinga over the reported incidents of police brutality during demonstrations, Koome now says Azimio are engaging in a pure propaganda and fear-mongering to destabilize the police service. Koome argues that Azimio are hell-bent on denting the credibility of its officers and accuse them of going to the extent of procuring dead bodies from various morgues to display in a public and paint his officers as rogue and unprofessional. Now, in a quick rejoinder, Azimio termed IG Koome's statement as unfortunate and insensitive to the victims of police brutality. Our reporter, Henry Tende, now looks at the exchange of words between these two camps and files the following report.
We've seen in the recent past, and very unfortunate, senior members of the society going to mortuaries, hiring dead bodies, calling media, telling media that these people were killed by police officers. How low can some of our leaders sink?
This statement by Inspector General of Police Japhet Koome, dismissing opposition assertions that police are to blame for the killings witnessed during demonstrations, has received sharp criticisms from Raila Odinga and his team. Mr. Odinga says the statement by Japhet Koome is out of touch with reality and that statement is unfortunate and insensitive to families mourning their loved ones and those nursing injuries from police brutality.
Very disappointing to see a statement from Inspector General of Police, Mr. Koome, saying that we hired dead bodies to accuse police of brutality. I don't know in which world he lives, because the bodies we've been burying have bullet wounds on them. And death certificates confirming the cause of death.
Azimio are adamant the police went rogue on their supporters and have blamed Inspector General of Police Japhet Koome allegedly for directing his officers to descend with brutal force on his supporters who were engaged in peaceful demonstrations.
If Kenya was governed by the rule of law, If Kenya had a caring government, the people we are burying and those recuperating would not have suffered that fate.
As the National Police Service, we have a role to protect life and property. We have a responsibility to ensure this country is secure and safe. And that is a mandate we are going to discharge without fear or favor.
Raila and his team now say they will stop at nothing until justice is served for all those who suffered in the hands of police, the group threatening to sue the government at the International Criminal Court.
We will do whatever it takes to ensure justice for the victims. We will ensure the perpetrators of these crimes pay.
They can continue threatening us that so and so will go to ICC, so and so will go to court. That has no implications at all in terms of our commitment.
Kome remains defiant his officers acted professionally in managing the protests and has told the opposition outfit Azimio his officers will not be intimidated or swayed from carrying out their duties.
Kuna wengine tumesikia wakitisha ati hivi karibuni tutaenda kwa barabara kuharibu mali, kuharibu biashara za watu. Wewe unajidanganya. We are going to deal with you family and decisively without fear or favor, as I've said.
This is not the first time IG Japhet Kome and Odinga have found themselves at loggerheads over the police conducting the opposition-led demonstrations. They have laid blame on one another over who should bear responsibility for the loss of life and wanton destruction of property. This begs the question, will the victims ever get justice? Henry Tende, Lookuptv.
The Azimio faction now says they are ready to have talks with the Kenya Kwanza team today at the Bomas of Kenya. The coalition has appointed embattled the Jubilee Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni as head of the legal and technical team of the bipartisan talks. Azimio leader Raila Odinga reiterated that the Azimio coalition is not interested in a handshake with the Kenya Kwanza government.
Planned talks with the Kenya Kwanza. We are here to announce that we are ready. We are particularly ready to return to Bomas of Kenya. We continue regarding Bomas of Kenya as a sacred ground when it comes to the quest for reform, change, and national healing. We have told our delegation, and we want all Kenyans to understand that engaging in honest dialogue does not amount to surrender or cowardice. We must see it as an act of strength and a matter of common sense.
The focus now shifts to the national dialogue as the teams kick off the talks. However, the two teams have already drawn the line in regards to the issues that should make it to the table, despite calls from each side to respect each team's concerns. Raila Odinga has reiterated that he is not interested in the handshake, countering what the Kenya Kwanza team has been propagating.
I want to reiterate once again here, Azimio is not interested in handshake. We don't want to shake anybody's hands, particularly those people whose hands are tainted with the blood of innocent Kenyans. But we have agreed to negotiate in good faith, as we have mentioned.
Azimio has fronted the cost of living as agenda number one. However, the Kenya Kwanza team says that is not a subject of debate and will not be discussed.
We remain committed to negotiating in good faith on the basis of a plan to achieve a comprehensive settlement of the country's problems through dialogue. We stand for transparent, above board, and speedy talks guided by decorum, honesty, and respect for the people of Kenya.
Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka will lead the Azimio dialogue team and joined by his DAP Kenya counterpart Eugene Wamalwa, Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi, Nyamira Senator Okongo Omogeni, Al-Malindi MP Amina Mnyazi. The opposition coalition has also picked Jeremiah Kioni to lead the legal and technical team.
We picked the team with a full understanding that the country is on a wrong trajectory. With this reality in mind, we have put in place a technical and legal team to support our delegation to the dialogue. Consequently, we have settled on Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, the Secretary General of the Jubilee Party, to head the legal and technical team to the talks.
The Kenya Kwanza team will be led by National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah, followed by his Senate counterpart Aaron Cheruiyot, Embu Governor Cecily Mbarire, Yala Member of Parliament Hassan Omar, and Bungoma Women Representative Catherine Wambilianga. The Azimio coalition has listed a number of issues they want addressed. Its first agenda being reduction of the cost of living, followed by audit of the 2022 elections, bipartisan reconstitution of the IEBC, inclusivity in national affairs, and respect for political parties. The Kenya Kwanza coalition, on the other hand, has listed the reconstitution of IEBC, implementation of two-thirds gender rule in parliament, the inclusion of CDF in the constitution, the creation of the office of the leader of the opposition, as well as embedment of the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary in law. Brian Amuai, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
Part of those issues, yes, are the ones that are going to form the back end of our conversation this morning. It is not by design. It's just chanced that on a day like this last year, when by now you would have been at the polls, voting and waiting for the IEBC then to start the counting process and declaring some of those provisional results, today, exactly 365 days later, the government is going to lock horns with the opposition and discuss key matters that the opposition are pointing out as being one of those that they have to talk about, whether they like it or not. Now, key on that is on the cost of living. And so what we're going to do this morning then is talk about this and look a year back. Now, the government is coming with a lot of promises to introduce what was their manifesto as the blueprint to run this particular economy. Have they done it by anything? And I'm going that by the remarks of the president just the other day when he said, we have fixed the economy, so the only thing that is left is for me to send one Raila Amolo Odinga back home, packing. Joining us this morning is Dr. Moses Mwangi and Mr. Wanguyu John. We're going to sit down and have these conversations this morning. You can join us online at Lookuptv. How are you doing, sir? Karibu sana.
As the night falls, we come to life to bring you a comprehensive broadcast from the numerous events happening across our 47 counties.
When it breaks, it matters, and each story is important.
If it's Thursday, join me, Nancy Lima, and my able panelists as we break down the law jargons and analyze the Constitution in a way only you can understand.
The news cycle never stops, neither does time. We cover each and every sector and present to you factual and accurate occurrences. This is where facts win the day. Join me,
Nancy Lima,
Ian Keitani, Tuesday, every Wednesday,
Thursday,
as from 9 p.m. on The Insight, only on Lookuptv.
Assalamu alaikum. Siku ya leo tuko katika kaunti ya Kwale. Takriban watu 800 leo watapokea usaidizi wetu kwa hisani ya RUTO Foundation. Kwa hivyo ambatana na mimi siku ya leo tuone hali vipi.
Iko mbaya sana baba. Iko mbaya hali. Iko mbaya. Njaa tu.
Tunashukuru kwa grupu ya Tuliani Kayamba.
Nashukuru kupata msaada kidogo, unaweza kunisaidia kidogo.
Waizidi na imani hiyo hiyo.
Asante sana kwa RUTO, manake imebadilisha maisha, imetugusia maisha yetu na leo tunalala watu tofauti.
Na wanekasheni, nashukuru na Mungu akubarikieni.
As long as we go with that theme that ukicheza kila mtu ni mshindi, we will also continue to support.
Kwanza na wafurahikia sana, nataka tena wakija wanikumbuke mimi mzee wao.
Thank you for your help. Together, we are changing lives.
It's time to restart, rescale and talk about health matters.
If you get exposed to high fluoride between 0 to 12 years, your teeth will be permanently discolored.
Wake up, eat healthy and keep fit. With the help of health experts, we will help you understand different health conditions and how to treat them.
Dental fluorosis is an irreversible condition that affects the outer layer of your tooth.
This is your health journal. My name is Wanjugu Washira.
Every Wednesday from 8:30 p.m.
Everything will be well discussed here on this platform.
Only on Lookuptv.
Kipindi ni ukulima ni mali na manjoro. Every Sunday saa 10. Jiunge na mimi ili nikufundishe mengi kuhusu ukulima wa nyanya, wa mboga, kuweka ng'ombe, kila kitu ambayo inahusikana na ukulima, ili ujifundishe mengi uweze kujua ukulima pia ni mali. Kumbuka kipindi ni nini? Kipindi ni ukulima ni mali na manjoro, upate hela.
Guess what? I'm holding the Standard this morning, not because it's a newspaper review, but because they are essentially pointing out to what we are talking about this morning. It's exactly a year later. That's what they're saying. And just like we introduced today, a time like this last year, it looks as if it's not been a year, but time moves that fast. Because now, if you start counting, it means that the Kenya Council government only has 4 years left. Okay, but by design again, or not by design, we are still talking about the elections today, a year down the line. Today, at exactly 11:30 a.m., the 10-member committee, all right, that is from the Kenya Kwanza side and from the Azimio side, are going to table their inaugural talks at the Bomas of Kenya. We do not know what they're going to talk about, because up until today, the Kenya Kwanza side is saying, well, we're not going to talk about the cost of living, we're not to talk about the auditing of the 2022 results. Done and dusted. But the Azimio side is insisting that for us then to continue with those talks, we have to talk about the cost of living and the auditing of the 2022 results. Joining us this morning, like I introduced them, we do have Dr. Mwangi with us and Mr. Manguyu as well. So let me start with you, Dr. Mwangi. It's been a year, but we are still talking about the elections today. It's a contentious issue.
Yes,
1 year down the line, we have not resolved the election. The ghosts of Bomas, where we saw tables turn, are still with us. We still have a scenario where the IEBC has not published the results as required by law, constituency by constituency, and therefore that gives fodder to Right Honorable Raila Odinga to claim that the results were buggered. 1 year down the line, the two sides of the political divide are in campaign mood, both the government side and Azimio. Azimio were obviously trying to get the people and rally them to convince them that there is an illegitimate government. And then Kenya Kwanza saw, wow, if we let these guys continue to say what they are saying, people will believe. So they have hit the road also. The number of rallies that the president is doing, connecting with his base to reiterate what their agenda is, using opening of projects that some of which were already opened and which were started during the last government, to connect with the base and remind them we have a plan. Still remains a promissory note. So it is really not the best way to do government business, where 1 year down the line, a whole 365 days, instead of the government working for the people, the government is still trying to convince the people that they are the government, because the opposition is telling the people there is no government. So is this how really a country would grow? I would say no. Yes. I think we need to change this kind of phenomena, and therefore the talks, I hope they can, I use the word hope because really I have a lot of hope for this nation, that they can take this talk seriously. Bomas is a very historical place where the Constitution of Kenya was negotiated. Bomas is the place where the 2022 fiasco on these elections that remain unsettled took place. So on one side, a constitutional making place. On the other side, a low moment. Can they turn Bomas into a place where we can fix the politics of this country once and for all?
That's it. John, I'll be coming back to an audit of what has been 1 year since we formed a new government. But it's not by design, again, that exactly 1 year down the line, we are still talking about issues that you like to think Kenyans rubber-stamped and made decisions to 365 days ago. Does it concern you that indeed the government now, as opposed to sticking to delivering the promises that they made to the Kenyans back in August 2022, in August 2023, they're still talking about how to govern this country, John?
Yes. Good morning. Good morning, Simba, and of course our viewers. 1 year down the line. Yes. Actually, time really flies. Huh?
It does, isn't it?
And government has been caught up in this situation where instead of getting on with the job, they're actually sort of fighting to prove that they won the elections. But I think that 1 year down the line, it's a good thing that the country continues to be peaceful, as much as we saw some chaos and some disruptions in the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
The good thing is that both sides have agreed to come to the table and talk, of which I think it's unfair to actually be talking about the elections 1 year down the line. Actually, given the conditions and the circumstances, especially the economic sort of upheaval we are facing as Kenyans, and the social upheaval as well, we should be working. We should be in our places of work, doing things and trying to grow the economy, trying to earn a living and so on and so forth. But to find ourselves having a conversation about something that ideally should be in the back burner, it should be part of history. Because number one, we know how the elections are conducted. We know there is an elaborate framework of how to conduct elections. And then number two, if you have a problem or you're dissatisfied with that particular process, you have an opportunity to challenge that process. And then number three, obviously, once the IEBC and the Supreme Court have spoken, or any other court, remember you can challenge any of the positions that were being contested for. But once the IEBC and then the courts reinforce what the IEBC has said, or negate what the IEBC has said, then the other option is simply to accept and move on and get back onto our lives. So the problem is the IEBC spoke, especially when you come to the presidential election. And then the Supreme Court settled matters. And the Supreme Court, as an arbiter or as a third party outside the political process, should be the final say on these matters. So the opposition, or the presidential candidate for the opposition, prosecuted his case at the Supreme Court. We all followed it. And we remember well that even the Supreme Court itself conducted an audit, which is an independent audit of the results, and actually confirmed what IEBC had said. And actually the Supreme Court president went as far as saying that whatever you presented here was lies, hot air, and so on and so forth. So to actually come back and then try and impeach that particular process, I think it's unfair on Kenyans, it's unfair on the process. Because ask yourself, IEBC conducted elections to fill around 2,000 positions. So MCAs, women representatives, governors, senators, and then of course the presidential election. When you take that one presidential election and work out as a percentage of the whole process, it's a very, very small percentage. So why is it that everybody has faith in the process, and therefore nobody is challenging, nobody is, for example, saying that Igade should sit down with Sakaja and discuss issues around Nairobi. So why 1 year down the line are we talking about the presidential elections? And to be honest, is that we need to get on with our lives. And once elections have been conducted, we know that how the process is carried out. And once you're dissatisfied, you know what to do. But once the courts have spoken, we can come back and start saying, we start impeaching that particular process on the basis of a single say, for example, the whistleblower. I know that azimio, we know that azimio has been saying that there is a whistleblower who claims that IEBC bungled the elections. But we have never seen, we know that from our jurisprudence and the Supreme Court jurisprudence, and the minor Kiage case, for example, from the High Court, that Form 34A is the alpha and omega of elections. That once whatever has been declared at the constituency, not at the polling station, that result is final. And you notice that in all these conversations, nobody has produced not even a single Form 34A and impugned it or impeached it and said this is a false document, say from Kileleshwa Primary School, for example. So I think it's unfair. I think it's a distraction. I think it's a waste of time. Let people get down to work, roll up our sleeves and build a nation, because that is our responsibility, all 50 million of us. We can't do that if 1 year down the line we are still disputing what should be a done and dusted case.
Dr. Mange, I want us to talk about that, and I want you to also respond to this particular question then. You see, John is saying, I don't get it. I mean, we've not seen the second the runners-up, sorry, in these other elections, saying, well, in these counties, in this what, we need to sit down and talk about how we're going to run this particular what. Why is it happening at the presidential spot? That's one. And number two, Jeremiah Kiage has been essentially put in that particular group that is going to meet at the Bomas of Kenya today, not to be the 5-member team, but there was sort of a big announcement from the Azimio side that, oh, now we do have Jeremiah Kiage in that group that is going to represent the Azimio side at the Bomas of Kenya today. At what point do we take this contested election as a special sport and not ask the rest of the questions that John is asking this morning? And do you think that Jeremiah Kiage's entry into that team and the announcement thereof is a special, is anything worth talking about this morning?
First of all,
yes.
Let me say that with all due respect to my brother John, who holds that we should have moved on,
yes,
that would have been true if the IBC, which is the arbiter, had finished this job together. We have a scenario, yes, where at the end of the process, the IBC was divided 4 against 3. If you then add the fact that the chairman has a casting vote right down the middle. So at the end of at the conclusion of the presidential election, in Bomas, we had a scenario where a majority of the commissioners disagreed with the results. They disagreed with the results, and we ended up with chaos, a scenario where you don't know. We as Kenyans don't know.
Was it constitutional though, Dr. Mwangi?
What was constitutional?
The election process, was it constitutional?
What is constitutional? We don't know anymore what is constitutional.
In regards to the election process in this country.
The elections were conducted.
Yes.
And then let me tell you, for some of us who go to elections, we look forward to a day where you can go to an election and be sure that that voter, their vote was counted and it counted. We look forward. We have been making forward steps, two steps forward, 1 step back. So the fact that the issue of the IBC is on the table for the bipartisan talk, because as we speak here, there is not a single commissioner of IBC. How can we be sitting restive as a nation when you do not have an IBC? And by the way, it should have been delimiting boundaries by 2022. It did not delimit the boundaries because there has been a conversation all over. So it would be dishonest to for any of us to say that all is okay when it comes to our election. Why the presidential election? It is a presidential election that is where the chaos erupted in Bomas, and therefore that becomes the main conversation. The other conversations about other elections of MCA, of MP, of Senate, etc.
Yes.
I can tell you there are issues. But the design, the structure of our electoral process, especially when we have a country where the #1 issue, in my view, the #1 cancer in this nation is corruption, lack of integrity in public office. To that extent, then, of course, it permeates all systems. Therefore, it is very unfortunate that we should be talking about elections for a whole year, an election that is over. It is not good for this country. It's not good for our lives. It's not good for the economy. If anything, it it takes us back to where we didn't want to be. But that's where we are, and that's why I hope these talks will fix it. Now, as for Jeremiah Kioni,
yes,
is he the Secretary General of Jubilee, the divided Jubilee? Yes. Jeremiah Kioni, the man of Sufurias. has been, I mean, this gentleman has been out there and maybe the strongest voice, together with Mother Karua, from the Mount Kenya region that supported azimio. And therefore, to have a conversation, a very important conversation in Bomas, that is, if it is conducted properly, and I hope it does, will bring about the proposals for a better Kenya into the future. For Mount Kenya to be missing from the azimio team, this was not looking, this was not going to be a good thing for Raila Odinga and azimio team, because really, what made William Ruto president? It is the 47% of the vote he got from Mount Kenya region. What made Raila Odinga lose again? It is the fact that he did not get the votes that he needed as counted by the IEBC. You know, the fact that they have not been published.
I like
we
the
don't know.
I like when you say it's counted by IEBC.
As counted by
is it because
one wing of the IEBC?
Why is it because? Is it because Mount Kenya did not contribute enough to him? Hence, what would you have? The representation in that team?
That is the question. That the jury is out there, and that is why it is very important to resolve. Yeah. We don't want to be in this situation in 2027. We want to be in a situation where the IEBC finishes the job together. That would give confidence to the nation and to move on. We must get men and women who are equal to their task.
Yes.
Not a scenario where we have a one-man show, Chebukati show, then becomes IEBC. We are not all convinced.
John, two issues I'm going to respond to as well.
Yes.
I like the way Dr. Mangi said, as conducted by IEBC.
By IEBC,
but if somebody turns a particular statement and will say, well, but IEBC is the official body for giving you the results and running those particular elections. And number two, the late entry of Jeremiah Kioni to that particular team. You would say, well, he's a friend of the team. And the way that the Azimio coalition announced that particular name yesterday, you would think that there are headlines around that. So the question from there is this: does the Mount Kenya region really deserve, even if we're talking about a slice of a share of whatever deal that they'll come up with in that particular team? Because when it comes to them contributing to the votes of one Raila Amolo Odinga, the narrative is that we didn't give you the votes because we're punishing one Uhuru Kenyatta.
First of all, we're starting with the matter of Jeremiah Kioni and, of course, the late inclusion into the negotiating team only as part of the secretariat, is that for context. Unfortunately, Baba has played into the hands of his critics. That you even hear when the president says, "Si huyu Baba tunamjua." And the reason I'm saying that is, you remember in back in 2018, just before the handshake, or during the time of the handshake, you remember Kalonzo and Musalia Mudavadi and Wetangula, which was part of the NASA coalition, were actually just as shocked as everybody else when we saw Baba standing, shaking hands with Uhuru on the steps of Harambee Avenue. Yes. So there has been this caricature that has been built up of Raila Amolo Odinga, that when he comes to elections, he goes into the elections, sometimes in a very sort of shambolic manner, and not well prepared, and then of course inevitably he loses, and then we know that from there he disputes the elections, tries to delegitimize the whole process, And then sort of incite, if I can use that word, after the elections, incite the public against the results and claim that we actually won, the other guys lost, and basically the elections were stolen from me. So that is sort of the script or the caricature that we know that has been built around Baba when it comes to elections. And therefore, and then to continue that sort of caricature is that he will go for the handshake or be included in government in some form or some capacity, and then everybody else who was in the fight with him gets abandoned. Yes? So when this particular thing happened, you remember it was on a Sunday, I think, when the majority leader, Kimani Ichung'wah, released a statement and said, we've agreed on these particular issues, and this is what is going to happen. And then Azimio was quick to sort of say, no, we didn't agree on the issues, but our team is Opio and I, and so on and so forth. And then people looked at that list, and so there was no one from Mount Kenya. And people were quick to say, we told you, look, Mount Kenya was part and parcel of the Azimio coalition. Of course, not in the numbers that they would have wished to have, but somehow there was no representative from Mount Kenya in that particular 5-member listing. So I think that there's some credence to that particular observation, that the addition of, what do they call it, a secretariat?
Does it? Yeah.
Yes, the inclusion of Kioni through that secretariat, I think is to try and counter that criticism that this is typical Baba, will go for the handshake, abandon everybody else who was with him in the fight, and then move on as if nothing happened.
Yes.
So with that, I think there is some credibility to that particular sort of...
I want you to hold your thought there, John, because then once we come back, you'll be responding to Dr. Mwangi's concerns that this is presidential, that we can't sit and say that it was okay, we followed the process, when indeed the body behind this particular process completely disagreed in the middle on the election results. So that's essentially what we have to talk about, that it doesn't make sense to talk about it. Once we come back, we'll be going back to Wanguyu John so that he can actually make his sentiments, so that now we can continue then. Once I come back, this gentleman then will be looking at exactly what the summary for the Standard this morning has been. And by that particular summary, I'll be picking the sentiments of John and Dr. Mwangi, because according to them, it is nothing other than one, which is essentially fertilizer. Once we come back.
Praise the Lord and Bwana Yesu asifiwe sana. My name is Pastor Joseph. I'm from a ministry called Reconcilers World. God gives strength to the weary. I am, Jesus is speaking. He says, I am the door. Then he says, anyone who enters in through me will be saved. The Lord is my shepherd or shepherd. Then he says, I will always have everything I need. God desires to guide you. He's telling you that this day, don't just trust the Lord, but he's telling you, trust the Lord widely.
Hi, and welcome to Tujenge Home. Your #1 show when it comes to all things architecture, real estate, property development, interior design. You get it right here on Tujenge Home.
When the food is ready.
You want to serve them?
Dinner is served. Yeah. Let's go. Let's go.
As it, welcome back then. Let's pick up our conversation. In case you're just joining us, we're looking at exactly 1 year down the line. Today, you should have been at the polls or already cast your vote if you did, and waiting for IEBC to start giving you those provisional results this evening, a year ago. Good. Today again, we're sitting to likely talk about the 2022 election results, because the Azimio coalition is saying we have to go back and audit those results and even talk about inclusivity. That is essentially government. But then the government came in place and said, we've won the election and we had a plan, so we got to govern this country. The Kenya Kwanza side has a part to play in those negotiations because, again, they've come up with their own demands that are essentially on governance. So, no there yet. John, Dr. Mwangi said we have to talk about auditing of the 2022 results. We got to talk about it. Because indeed, if you go back to that particular process, there was one fully that the commissioners themselves disagreed midway on that particular result. Therefore, we got to talk about it.
Yes. To begin with, if we're going to do an audit of the last elections, who's going to do it? How are we going to do it? Difficult question, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, everything to do with elections is the responsibility of the IEBC. And that is the constitutional procedure.
Yes.
As laid out in the Constitution, it is the role of the IEBC to conduct and to manage elections. So from that, by extension, you're simply saying everything and anything to do with elections is under the mandate of the IEBC. But we don't have an IEBC in terms as far as the commissioners being in place and the chairman being in place is concerned. So who's going to to conduct this audit? Yeah. So in terms of that's a very, very important question in terms of that being an agenda going forward. That how are we going to do it and who is going to do it? And what guarantees do we have that whoever does the audit, assuming it's somebody outside the IEBC, because I don't think Azimio will agree to a situation where the same IEBC they're accusing of bungling the elections, then as the same people given the responsibility to audit those elections.
Part of the demands is that we have to come up with a process of reconstituting the IEBC.
Yes. So there is a part of, these are two issues which are separate. There is the reconstitution of the IEBC, so that we give it a chairman, we give it the 6 members of the IEBC. That is one process. And then there is the audit that these guys are calling for. So how do we, if you're to extend it sort of to think of it philosophically, how are we going to do it? Who is going to audit IEBC? Because we do not expect IEBC to audit itself. So who is this who's going to audit IEBC or the election results? So once we've done that, what guarantees do we have that either Azimio or the Kenya Kwanza side will accept the results of that particular process? That is number one. And then number two, isn't that unconstitutional? And we operating outside the Constitution. And the whole process is supposed to keep us within the Constitution, respect for the rule of law. So what happens when we conduct a process alongside or outside the Constitution? So those are matters that we should really think about. Going back to IEBC and the last elections, and of course the split, like Daktari said, between the 7 commissioners. So we had 4 on the one hand and 3 on the other.
Yes.
We know that the 4 came in later. So in theory, if they had not taken part in the messing up of the presidential elections, the truth of the matter is that the 4 would still be in office, I would imagine, because for them, they joined IEBC, I think, in 2021.
Yes.
Or was it? Yes, in 2021. So if you count 6 years, those guys would have been in charge, would have remained to sort of carry over IEBC into the next sort of year over a period of 6 years. But unfortunately, because of what happened, 3 of them were forced to resign, and then 1 of them was actually fired after the commission of inquiry.
Yes.
So I think that, of course, when you look at that particular mess, I think by going back to reopen the elections and all those issues, as much as I think it's very, very remote, I don't think it's going to happen, in my own personal opinion, that if we were to go down that road, then again, we will keep wasting time. And then our problems will keep compounding and so on and so forth. And we'll continue arguing that the government is doing zero. But for me, I think that agenda should be off the table.
Yes.
The IEBC agenda should only be limited to reconstituting it, so that it can get ready for the process that Dr. has spoken about, which is delimitation and other things, so that we don't end up again in 2027 on the eve of elections. That's when we are reconstituting IEBC. So for me, let them get down to the agenda of reconstituting IEBC, but the audit, for me, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Dr. Mange, I see you smiling. I'm just going to give you a minute so that you actually look at exactly what John has submitted, that indeed, it doesn't make sense. Leave it. Talk about other issues so that we continue moving this country forward. And part of those issues are IEBC. So essentially what he's saying, well, just get ready for the next election. You know, just have a commission in place that all of you agreed upon, so that now when the next election comes, you'll be saying, well, this commission is the right one, is in the right frame to essentially then carry over the next election. Is that it?
Well, I happen to come from a health practitioner background.
Yes.
And what we find is that you have a wood, it's covering up, but deep down there is pus. So leave it. The next thing you're going to have to do is to possibly lose a limb. You do not cover a problem. You go deep, exercise, and remove the rot that is eating you.
Yes.
Then you heal.
We
have a scenario where
Uh-huh.
the biggest issue in elections over and over again has been the IEBC. In 2007, 2008, an audit was done. There was agreement to bring in Justice Krieger. He came, he worked, and finally he said it was difficult to know who was the winner. But here is a script of what you do to make sure that in future you get a credible election. And one of the recommendations, which has not been properly implemented in the 2022, he said, Justice Krieger said, time is lost at the beginning. You need to fix all issues 2 years to the elections. Here is a commission where even 1 year to the election, that's when we are bringing in the 4 commissioners. They may have been the newest broom that was supposed to clean better. Then they come and find this place is rotten. The way this thing is designed, it's going to fail.
Yes.
And finally they decide, no. We will start. Remember Amakobe on a plane to go and verify material, heading up in New York. These are people, so when you find people like the Cherera 4, like the Amakobe, they are people, in my view, who stand for something. They say, this is wrong. Unfortunately, majority would like to say, forget about them, let's move on. By the way, in management, yes, you make a plan. You execute the plan. Then you check how you have executed the plan. You adjust. It's a whole cycle. An audit, IEBC, at any time must audit the elections. If you do not audit, then you don't know where to improve. And by the way, in my definition of auditing, it doesn't necessarily have to go to the level of let's count these votes again so that we know who was the winner. you know, remember Justice Maraga ruling when he invalidated 2017, he said that the process is as important as the outcome. And if you have a wrong process, then the outcome is wrong. And that's why he's invalidated. So we had a repeat of 2022, but the justice system that was there then, and we had a worse scenario in 2022 where the commission split. So audit must be done, whether it is done with a mind. For me, the audit that I have in mind is an audit to understand how can we conduct elections better? How can we make sure that there is confidence? And confidence will come when the EBC is able to stand together.
Yes.
Believe you me, 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, I think history may pass a verdict on Chebukati and his team. He conducted 2022, there were problems. He conducted 2017, there were problems. History. So as a country,
yes,
as a nation that wants to move forward, Kenya has been the country to watch in the region, and we cannot get it wrong. In my view, audit must be done.
Yes.
But not the audit to say, now this one won and this one lost. For me, that will not help this country to get to the point where we then say, this one got these votes, this one got... The audit that I would be interested in as a Kenyan,
yes,
so that next time I'm able to go and vote. Otherwise, why go and vote? We must secure our democracy. As a Kenyan, we want to go and vote with full confidence that the body that is given the responsibility to run the election is credible, it will do a good job, my vote will count. If that is not given, you will see Kenyans, saying, why go and vote? So, audit must be done. I agree with my brother who will do the audit. The IBC as currently is, it only has a management. And from a governance perspective, management should be watched by a governance, board of governors.
Yes.
In this case for IBC, it is the commissioners. In a scenario where the management is running things, and management is management, depending on how the systems are set, and our IBC systems have not been properly set, because every 5 years we are reconstituting it, or so to speak. Therefore, the IBC as currently constituted cannot do a proper audit. Therefore, the issue is, should we first of all reconstitute and get the commissioners, then to go and properly set, because you can't send every employee of IBC home. Even the new commissioners will not come and say, now we have a new commission, send everybody home. By the time they go through the cycle, you have the commissioners, you have proper systems to be able to audit. We will be another year talking about elections. This is not good for this country. When the negotiating team sits down, I think one of the things they should agree is that let's audit, but this audit is not about counting votes, because I think we should cross that line, respect the Supreme Court decision, whether the facts are wrong at the beginning. That is neither here nor there. That will not help us. But let's do an audit of understanding how can we set things better so that the next election we give confidence to the people that when they go and vote, there were these problems that we saw, we are fixing them, therefore the nation will be better.
Actually, just to Nini, I quite agree with what Dr. is talking about, the audit. Because audit is a mechanism that is used by management and everybody in many organizations to help you improve your processes.
Yes.
But we know that from what Azimio is talking about, it's not that kind of audit. Them, they're talking about kufungua server. Yeah? And that is where I think some of us, from a governance perspective, have a problem with, because it actually is what Daktari is saying, that we should always, that's a continuous process. It happens in every organization, that you carry out an audit and then ask yourselves, how are we going to do this particular process better, so that we improve it, so that we give the people, our stakeholders, the confidence to engage with us. But now to say that we go open the servers and look at the Form 34As and 34Bs in the server, for me it doesn't make sense, because again, at the danger of sounding like a broken record, the truth of the matter is nobody has impeached Form 34A. And we know that from the Kenyan jurisprudence around elections, 34 is the alpha and omega of elections. We know that from the Simba Kiage case. We know that from the Maraga judgment. We know that from Willy Mutunga back in 2013. That the Form 34A is the final arbiter of an election. Yes? Nobody has provided a Form 34A, not even a single one. Say, for example, like I used the example of Kilelesho Primary School, to say that this is the Form 34A that was signed at that polling station and is very, very different from what we downloaded from the public portal. Remember, this is one of the most open elections that have been ever, in terms of conducting the process of counting votes and so on and so forth. One of the most open, I think, we've had since the new constitution. Remember, these Form 34As were in a public portal. I don't know whether they are still accessible even today.
You could still access them. Actually,
yes. So anybody can go in there and download those Form 34As, all 46,000 of them, and do an audit. Remember, this is one of the elections that there was a lot of crowdsourcing, in the sense that the counting of the votes was actually done by very, very many people. Yes, some of them outside the IEBC process, individuals, civil groups or civil rights organizations that actually agreed with what Chebukati announced. It's only a difference probably of 1,000, 2,000 votes, yes? There was that variation, plus minus.
Yes.
But when you look at it, the truth of the matter is nobody has impeached not even a single Form 34A. And that is what our Constitution says. That is what our law says. The moment you say that let's put all this aside because some character has come and said this is the correct Form 34B, already there is a problem, because that's not how to conduct it. So for me, I totally agree with Dr. on the part of the audit, but that has to be part of the conversation around the continuous improvement so that we can do this process better over the years. But it's not to open it up and say that actually Simba won, Wangunyu lost.
Yes. Dr. Mangi, last sentiments on that.
I mean, I've been to elections 3 times. So I know what I'm talking about. I have results in one primary school. There are 2 streams. This stream, you have 700 votes against 20. The next stream, you have 30 against 800. Same primary school. I mean, I can tell you, I was in elections 2022. I don't know what I got, because the results, as they came, they do not reflect. For that Form 34A, yes, the one which is in the system, how did it get there? They tried to impeach it. There's a lawyer who tried to impeach it. You remember?
Yes.
The Kagema, Mautelgon.
Yes.
It turned out to be hot air as at that time, because there was no proper evidence that was produced. But somebody tried to impeach it. The so-called whistleblower, we don't know whether they are ghosts or whether they are real.
Yes.
They have tried to impeach Form 34A. So, and in audit, you have to go to do an audit trail. all the way down. You will not do a proper audit if you do not open the servers. By me, there are situations, even in justice system, where matters are heard in the chamber, not in the open.
Yes.
For me, for the sake of the future, obviously a proper audit must look at the whole trail. You have to have your objective in mind. The objective of this audit is not to invalidate the results as announced, but it is to understand what happened. And some of these, for me, should be done back room. And then to be able to know, okay, how do we prevent this from happening? And I think, for me, one of the things the Azimio team needs to agree is that this audit is not about declaring Baba the winner or validating William Ruto the winner. That was already decided. The winner was announced. Rightly or wrongly, Kenya must move forward. But we need to understand where do we improve. And to understand that, we need to go through whether it is a confidential. There are things called confidential. Sometimes you get a letter written confidential. Certain things can be done confidentially, but you need to understand what happened so that you can fix the problem into the future.
Pretty much. Let's leave it there for now on the issues of the disagreements as this particular team then gets to talk about it, because the next one, which is a big disagreement, is also coming in the next part of our conversation. And I'm going to go back and look at exactly how we summarized this particular issue as it appeared for majority of Kenyans, that is according to the standard this morning. This is what they're saying. Number one, if you look at exactly what we've seen for the past 365 days or so, they're saying the only thing that is visible in this particular government is the affordable fertilizer pledge, which they say has largely been met. But then they go right ahead and give you an analysis of exactly where this government has been in as regards the last 1 year. They've been talking about pushing the country to sort of have a monolithic party situation where the rest of the parties, in as much as they exist, have no say or no power to conduct their business. They're talking about inheriting of a battered economy, a talk that has not died a year down the line. They're talking about a government that over the past 365 days, the only thing they've been doing is stopping street protests. And the only thing now that is quite notable and has got majority of people talking is the radical reforms that this government is going to introduce in the education sector. Is that it? Is that it? That's what they started saying. That's it. That nothing about the bottom-up economic model that can be felt. John, I'm going to give you 1 minute, and we're going to come back and talk about this once we come from this break. Is that it?
When you have a really bad headache or a really bad toothache, what you need to do, or what you want to do, is to take Panadol or Buscopan or something to relieve the pain.
It's a good thing we have the doctor in the house.
Yes, Dr. is here can attest to that. And usually you want instant relief.
Oh,
true or false? True. So you have a really bad headache, you reach out for some Panadols, pop 2 into your mouth, wash them down with water, and expect instant relief. The reason I'm giving that analogy is that is where we find ourselves as Kenyans. We have this really bad economic situation where families are struggling, people are struggling to find work, and so on and so forth. Businesses are struggling, and so on and so forth. So when the administration came in, of course, had made many promises. So think of them as Panadol. And everybody has taken the Panadol, but the pain is taking longer to subside. And that is the situation we find ourselves.
Yes.
That economically, we are struggling. We are in pain. People are suffering. They want instant relief. But unfortunately, that's not how the system works. And even Dr. will tell you, even when you take those painkillers, they don't relieve pain immediately. It's a sort of slow process.
That's it. Once we come back from this tiny break, John, I would like for you to expound on exactly where you are with those particular statements. This is it. And they continue with this story, and they did cover it on pages 2, 3, 4, and 5. But for anybody who wants to take a look at it, they're saying leaders are stuck in perpetual campaign mode. There's a bid to make UDA a monolith party as a RUTO flexes its political muscle. And then they keep on looking at it. They're saying, well, residents in the South Rift Valley wait for RUTO to keep on word on even the projects that he said he was going to deliver in that particular area. Once we come back, then we'll be asking the question, 1 year since you voted, are you happy? Is that it? As the Standard is calling it this morning.
Today we are hosting the RUTO Foundation as they do a food distribution to the community. The community involves people from Huruma. Huruma is where we have the home for the aged. So quite a population from the home are getting the gift packs. Most of our children come from Githogoro and Huruma. These are informal settlements. Honestly, these parents have not been working. The number of children that will come to me, even the ones who are not in school, and tell me, Mwalimu, we have not fed for 3-4 days, is quite huge. So this will go a long way. A family that has not fed for 3 days, they will at least get a meal. We also thank RUTO. This is the second time that you're coming, and it always makes a difference. It always makes a difference.
Thank you for your help. Together, we are changing lives.
Hi, and welcome to Tujenge Home. Your number one show when it comes to all things architecture, real estate, property development, interior design. You get it right here on Tujenge Home. When the food is ready.
You want to serve them?
Dinner is served. Let's go. Let's go.
All right, at Lookuptv across all your social media platforms. We're still with Dr. Mwangi and John this morning. All right, John, I want us to get back to that particular question that I asked you before we went on break. And I would like to do the summary again according to what the Standard is presenting this morning, that what has been met so far is the affordable fertilizer pledge. All right, the rest of them have not been met. That is essentially breaking the promise for 100 days. And if you continue with that story, it's even opening those pages, they're even saying, well, majority of the leaders in that particular government are still stuck in campaign mode. Do you agree that even as we sit on your Panadol analogy, there are those specific ones that were made that majority of Kenyans have not seen yet?
Again, thank you. Again, I'll sort of start with that particular issue. Everybody wants instant relief, which is okay. It's human. But all of us want instant relief.
But would somebody challenge that analogy and say, you went to hospital and the doctor said, I am going to make you heal now. I'm that good. Somebody's going to challenge that analogy and say, well, you see this medicine I've given you?
But that is not how life works.
Just for 3 months.
We know.
Yeah.
We all know. We all sort of understand these things.
But you
that is not how it works.
You sought that Dr. John.
Yes, you saw the doctor.
Yeah, there were so many other
doctors.
doctors.
You take this medicine, this will help to relieve your pain.
There were other options.
Yes, but But you chose to go to that particular doctor, and
because
he gave
that
that
doctor
medicine.
said, I'm the best option.
Yes.
Give me your time.
Yes.
100 days. I'm not like the rest of them.
And allow the medicine to take its time and do its work.
But the doctor said in 100 days.
In 100 days.
For
but
me,
there's a lot of positive things.
My medicine works in 100 days.
Yes.
That's it.
I don't want to sound like a government spokesman, but I think that there's a lot of positive things that have happened. Subsidized fertilizer, it's now 2,500 shillings. And you look at the sort of the reasoning behind it, it actually makes sense. Because remember last week when we talked about subsidies, and somebody was advocating for subsidies for consumption. And remember, economic theory says that subsidies are very bad, especially when you subsidize consumption.
Yes.
Yes. So what the president did, or his administration has done, is to flip that argument and say that we actually are better off subsidizing production, because that is the only way we're going to ensure more food production.
Yes.
And it seems to be working. Yes. In terms of course, fertilizer, the last time, I think he was at State House last week. Was it last week? Yes.
Yes.
Where he launched fertilizer at, he actually said that fertilizer will be now 2,500 going forward. Yes. The truth of the matter is that is true, that by subsidizing production, maybe that should be extended to subsidizing seed as well.
Yes.
And it's only that way that we can uplift or increase our food production. And then, of course, we know that from supply and demand, the more we supply a particular commodity, then the lower the prices go. Yes? So in terms of that particular issue, then we can give it to him or his administration for actually delivering on that particular promise. But there's other promises they've made, and they're sort of working on it. Remember, again, these things require resources. Yes? And they require money. But at the same time, we know that those resources, we are constrained by the debts that we owe, isn't it? Yes? So, the employment of teachers. 20,000 last year, I think 36,000 this year.
Yes.
That's 56,000. He promised to give the police and the judiciary independence. He's done that. Actually, it was one of the first things that he did, to actually give the police financial independence and the judiciary the same. He appointed the 6 judges. Yes? For the first time, I saw the governor of, I think, Mandera, saying that it is the first time that county governments have moved into a new year without being owed by government of the equitable revenue. It's the first time it's happening. It is the first time that it's happening that counties have been given their share of equitable revenue in the same month that that money is expected. So that is to say that in July, last month, county governments got their allocation of equitable share in that same month. Remember, we are coming from a background of where this money was never submitted in time.
Yes.
So you would run for 6 months without getting anything from central government, and then you get a chunk. And then you get to the end of the financial year and you find that counties are still owed, say for example, 100 billion from the previous year.
Yes.
It is the first time that government has settled its bills as far as equitable share is concerned for county governments. What does that mean? This is what it means. For the first time, I had the governor of Mombasa, Abdi Nasir,
Yes.
And I think the governor of Kiambu County,
Yes.
saying that they did not cross over with any pending bills from the previous financial year. I think that's something. So there's gloomy things going on out there, but what I'm saying is I'm trying to take a positive attitude and say that, remember what I said at the beginning, that to rebuild this country or to build this country is our responsibility, all 50 million of us. If we're going to spend every day lamenting and saying X, Y, Z, it's not going to help us. We need to get down, strap up our boots, roll up our sleeves and get to work. It's as simple as that. But when we keep saying, government has not delivered, well, in reality, if you cared to look and do your research, you'll realize that government has been doing things. It's just that it's all swallowed up in the noise and the chaos around past elections, non-performance. And of course, all of it is, or some of it, is not supported by any evidence.
Dr. Wanji, the summary is, according to the Standard this morning,
yes,
is quite specific, that the only thing that we can point to directly is cheap fertilizer. Rest of it, neither here nor there.
Yes. I mean, it's good to give a balanced scorecard, as they say. If you want to measure performance, you need to use tools that can give you, you know, have they performed here or not? And when you look at performance, you need to see what is this new. So this new administration, what is new? In my view, I think the subsidy for fertilizer, and it should go all the way. Let me tell you, the global south in the international trade is highly disadvantaged when it comes to agriculture because the global north subsidizes their farmers. And for small-scale farmer to make sense, there has to be government subsidy. And I think this is a very positive step towards changing agriculture. And if we change agriculture, because agriculture is the major employer, then I think we'll be in a good way. And I would say, I think there we can give credit and say, let's go all the way. You know, keep the fertilizer going down. It needs to come down even more. 2.5 is good. Keep it going down. That way we'll stimulate production. Subsidize seed also. Let's give subsidy to the farmer. Then all of a sudden you'll discover that people who have been idling around and they have land, you know, like in my villages, in the villages, there are people, especially men, who wake up in the morning and they go to Kongeda in the shops. They will be able to go back to the land. I think that's a positive thing that we can count. What else is new? Look at it. I think the promise to make judiciary independent, which is a constitutional matter, the promise by the president that they will respect the rule of law, very good. And we would like to see that more in practice. And he did a good thing at the beginning. But lately then we see a ruling for finance bill, the court suspends, and then fuel goes up. So again, on one side you have given it, on the other you spoil it by disagreeing with the ruling instead of respecting. I think good move there in terms of giving judiciary independence, adding the money for their budget, and I think that should continue. I think that's a good thing also, which we can count. Police giving them autonomy, fine. But how have we seen the Police IG act? The Police IG in the recent way, how have we seen the ODPP work by withdrawing cases, high-profile cases that were already in the court and going non-prosecute of very high-profile cases that were meant to give confidence to the people of Kenya that if you take a sharing of theirs, you end up in court. Have we seen an independent mind in the ODPP, which is supposed to be independent? No. And what do we do after that? We give him another job. So I think with regard to the rule of law, maybe 2 steps back, forward, 1 step back. But we can give it. What else can we see? With regard to counties, I want to remind my brother John here that only in April that governors were threatening to shut down because they had not received their revenue for January, for February, for March. And they got a bit of it in April. And then they did not get for April, for May. When they got it, it was almost time to end the financial year, or 30th June, which is the financial year of government, they pleaded, please open IFMIs until mid-July so that we have time to spend the money. So I don't think the governors have been receiving their rightful share on time.
Yes.
And I think if some governors did not become innovative to increase their own revenue, and I think we need to commend some governors for taking steps to increase their own revenue, there would have been a crisis, so that from that money they have been able to pay salaries. Otherwise, there would have been a crisis. I think we need to see, somebody proposed that Treasury should become an autonomous, because it seems that Treasury funds the national government ahead of the county governments, and yet all of them are governments. So in that score, I would say we can do better. But on a balanced scale, the newspaper, is it the Standard?
The Standard,
that has
yeah.
identify fertilizer. I think that is identifiable. That is something you can write home about. It's like Mwai Kibaki when he gave free primary education. That was transformative. The fertilizer thing is transformative. That is what we can count. The others are the normal business that a government should be doing.
Yes.
It's normal business. We cannot say credit. That is what you should have been doing. It is provided for, so to speak. And in my view, there are still too many promises. While you should be working and delivering, we are still hearing, we will do, we will do. You are in government, do it now. Say we have done. We should stop, we will do, because that eventually will be music that will become dull.
Pretty much. John, if you listen to it, that there's just a lot of campaigns in the country, again, from the government, that we're stuck in the campaign mode. Do you agree that it's now time to work and stop walking around the country to talk about your agenda, like Dr. Mwangi is saying, just implement it?
Implement it, yes. People want to see results. People want to see their situation improving and changing.
Yes.
There's something that Daktari said at the beginning of his submission about Europe and the global south, which I want to sort of reinforce.
Yes.
And it's a very good thing that we should all be aware of, that in most of Europe, they have something called the Common Agriculture Policy, or CAP. And it's one of the most controversial things about the European Union, which is basically doing all these things that we are talking about. Subsidizes farmers, gives farmers inputs that are subsidized by governments.
Yes.
That is one. And then number two, they have a component called the minimum price guarantee, which is basically once you harvest your product, we are going to buy at a particular price regardless of what the international market is. And that in itself encourages farmers to produce more. Remember, we as Africa combined have more arable land than the rest of the world combined. And yet, we are a net importer of food. Then that tells you something is wrong. The same with the United States of America. They do the same. They subsidize their farmers by giving them inputs and then guaranteeing them a particular price. So you ask yourself, why is it that Africa, with all this arable land, cannot produce enough to feed itself at a minimum? But it's because governments have to be innovative enough to support their farmers so that they can produce more. And remember, the issue of the subsidizing consumption, again, I want to remind people that the last government or the previous administration subsidized unga to be sold at 100 shillings, which a majority of people did not see, and which up to today, the millers are still owed 4.5 billion as we speak today. Maize millers are still owed 4.5 million from that unga subsidy from last year, which we are going to end up paying all of us. So in that regard, I want to reinforce that particular perspective, that government should do more. They're on the right path, and actually it is quite a momentous sort of program actually, when you think about the ability of government to actually lower price of fertilizer from 7,000 all the way down to 2,500.
Yes.
They should actually go further and do that for seed as well. So that in that regard, it's a good thing. Continuing with the conversation around, it's time for us to get down to work. We need to get down to work. It's true, I agree with Daktari that the time for standing atop vehicles and saying tulisema, tutafanya, it is time to get the job done. But I think at the same time, you have to understand that the circumstances under which this government got into office have been quite sort of problematic for them, in the sense that you've got maandamano, you've got the opposition saying that you did not, trying to delegitimize your government basically, or your win. Yes. So when you're in that particular nini, you're placed in that sort of back foot where you're constantly trying to defend yourself. And I think part of, as much as of course there is work being done, part of the tour of the president of Mount Kenya region, which I think he's still in, is to sort of rally his base and tell the opposition that, hey, I got people who who voted for me, and they still believe in this government. You saw the crowds that came out in Nyeri, and it is basically to reinforce the idea that, you remember, the opposition has constantly been trying to delegitimize the presidency and the current administration. Yes, so you try and create questions or uncertainty about their win, about them being in office, and so on and so forth. So what do you do? Do you let that go and try and get down to the business of delivering? And that is a problem that the current administration was probably facing.
Yes.
And that is why I think the president went down to his base to basically remind the opposition, by the way, it was not a fluke. And I think he's done well so far. But it's true, we need to get down to work and build this nation. Again, 50 million of us.
Yes.
We all have our own responsibility to rebuild the nation.
I like the way John said, all of us, the 50 million of us.
Yes.
It's not just...
yes, exactly. Yes.
Fine. But gentlemen, we still have 5 minutes left for this conversation. I just want to pick your final sentiments on the talks that we do expect to start today at 11:30. Dr. Mwangi, just quickly then, I would like for you to answer a couple of questions that have been essentially tough for majority of people to decipher. Kimani Ichung'wah is saying, well, these talks are going to be all public. The azimio side is saying, no, only release statements when we are done and dusted with these talks. Should these talks at the Bomas of Kenya today be public so that the rest of the country can log in and actually get to follow the proceedings?
Well, if you ask me, my opinion is that the negotiators who have been put forward should sit somewhere and talk about what is the agenda. Let them agree on the agenda first, together. And when they have agreed on the agenda, let them tell us. Then they should get to the business of working through that agenda.
Yes.
And at the end of it, I mean, if you make them open, I think my Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, I think he's just still playing politics. Now he should remember he's the leader of the delegation of Kenya Kwanza. He should be listening to his constituency.
Yes.
What do they want? Not saying, because if they are open, my view, Kenyans are going to be glued on the television from morning, listening, instead of going to work. I think we should be a working nation. And the fact that they are going to sit gives us confidence. And I think they should go there seriously. And I pray, because the success of these talks depends on the president.
Yes.
The president, the government, because they are the ones ruling. The success of these talks depend on the position the president takes, whether he wants this to be meaningful conversation that helps this country, and he tells his people, the opposition has agreed, there is no handshake. We don't want handshake. They have agreed. The opposition has agreed there is no nusu mkate. So go and talk about the issues.
Yes.
Apply your mind. Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah went to Alliance. He has a mind. I think it is time now to stop politicking, saying what other people want to hear. Now apply your mind. Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, His Excellency, a diplomat par excellence. Those teams sit together. Let us, as Kenyans, let's continue with our work. Now we know you are talking. We can go to work and produce.
Yes.
Don't tell us to sit from morning to evening to listen to what Bomas is going to say for the next 30 days. For heaven's sake, when you go to see a doctor, he doesn't look at you in the presence of everybody. You go behind the scenes. When a judge finds that this matter is sensitive, they go to the chamber. There comes a time when matters which are very important should be done, and the rest of us given the food. The cook cooks in the kitchen. By the way, if you go to the kitchens of even top-star hotels, you go in there to watch when they are cooking. You will not enjoy the food. You better go and sit and wait to be served. We Kenyans want to be served by the outcome. But please, those negotiators from both sides, for once this year, because you have been talking at cross purposes, for once, sit and talk like Kenyans.
As John, 2 minutes left. Should I be public, like Kimani Ichung'wah is saying, or private until done and dusted, just like Dr. Mwangi is saying?
I would advocate for a hybrid. We can have some sessions that are public, some sessions that are private. In as much as, if you look at the agenda, unless there's something else that we don't know, is very sort of open matters. You look at the agenda of Kenya Kwanza, the 5 issues, you realize that some of them have an implication on the Constitution, and therefore means may end up somewhere if they were to agree in a referendum. And given what happened to BBI, then the question that we should be asking ourselves as Kenyans, and of course the Kenya Kwanza coalition should be asking themselves whether they are ready to get people, especially in the circumstances that we are in, economically and so on and so forth, that people will be willing to listen to a conversation around a referendum, because we're going to end up in a referendum somehow. Because if you look at that agenda, it proposes to change some parts of the Constitution. So that is from the Kenya Kwanza perspective. From the Azimio perspective, it's a good thing that they're bringing these issues to the table, but I feel sort of let down, because I think there are serious issues that the agenda should have been much more serious than it is. And the reason I'm saying that, without belittling that particular agenda, you look at the issue of, say, for example, cost of living. You can't sit around a table to discuss cost of living. You need sort of solid plans and programs and projects to actually try to help alleviate the cost of living. And then you look at the numbers that are coming out of Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and the Central Bank of Kenya, you notice that the inflation rate is falling. And then you look even at conversations on Twitter and so on and so forth, you'll notice people talking about some products prices starting to fall. Let's say, for example, LPG. LPG is falling. As much as we are still waiting for the 300 LPG, 300 shilling LPG, the truth of the matter is it's no longer at 1,800 for the small 6 kg Meko. It's around, I think, half that price. So things are actually slowly coming down. So actually, when you consider the nature of the push and pull of those conversations, you'll end up with a situation by the time we get to the end of the conversation that cost of living is no longer, because farmers are starting to harvest. So you go to Narok, farmers are starting to harvest wheat. You go to Western, farmers are actually harvesting maize, and so on and so forth. So in about a month or two, the agenda of food will sort of have been overtaken by events, if I can say that.
In 30 seconds, John.
Yes. And then the next one, of course, the issues of the reconstitution of the IEBC, at least both parties agree that is important. And of course, from our conversations here, from what Dr. has said, is that is important, because we need to remember Kriegler's advice that we need to take this matter seriously, so that we have sort of memory and continuity, so that you don't end up with these guys who come in to manage elections and they're only 3 months into the job. Of course, there's going to be problems. So, Azimio, please try and get some serious stuff on the agenda. Kenya Kwanza, ask yourselves whether people are willing to have a conversation around referendum, aka a BBI of some sorts. I doubt, with the circumstances that holding at the moment, it would be very, very difficult. So my opinion would be government get down to work, and us as Kenyans, let's get down to work.
Pretty much. Can't add anything to what those gentlemen have delivered this morning. Take them back to the time that they joined us live right here at Lookuptv online, across all your social media platforms as well, at Lookuptv, on the website www.lookuptv.co.ke. Take a tiny breather. Once we come back, let's move away from what has happened over 1 year, because things are happening in other sectors as well. Let's talk about where we are as a country in as regards green energy and green energy waste management once we come back.
Are you a junior secondary school, a college, a TVET institution, or a university?